Today we are going to discuss 8 specific foods that clinical research shows can erase visceral fat after 60 by targeting the exact biological signals that make this fat grow and survive. In which session we will explain how each food attacks visceral fat through a completely different pathway, so that when you combine them, the effect compounds far beyond what any single food can do alone. I want to start with Ruth because her story changed how I explain visceral fat to every patient over 60 who walks into my office. Ruth is 68 years old, a retired school teacher from Denver who had been eating what she thought was a perfect diet for 11 years. Low fat, low calorie, plenty of whole grains. But when we ran an abdominal MRI, the scan showed her liver, her pancreas, and her intestines were coated in a thick layer of visceral fat that her bathroom scale never detected. Ruth weighed 142 pounds. Her BMI said normal, and yet her organs were drowning in the most dangerous fat the human body produces. What most people do not understand is that visceral fat is not storage. It is a living organ that pumps out inflammatory chemicals 24 hours a day. After 60, 2 things accelerate this problem. Your hormones shift, so fat migrates from your hips and limbs directly into your abdomen, and you lose muscle, which is the tissue that burns glucose and keeps your metabolism running. Less muscle and more belly fat feed each other in a vicious loop, where the inflammation from visceral fat destroys more muscle, which then allows more visceral fat to grow. Every single food on this list breaks that loop from a different biological direction, which is why combining them produces results that dieting alone never achieves. Food number 8 is walnuts, and they repair the 2 things that grow visceral fat, which are inflammation and insulin resistance. Walnuts are exceptionally rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids, and a study showed that high intake of these fats for 12 months reduced visceral fat on MRI even without calorie restriction. The visceral fat reduction was independent of overall body weight loss, meaning people lost organ fat even when the scale did not move. Walnuts are specifically rich in alpha-linolenic acid, which calms the inflammatory signals coming from visceral fat, because this fat survives by staying inflamed, and when inflammation drops, the fat becomes easier to break down. The easiest way to start is a small handful added to your morning oatmeal, your salad, or your yogurt every single day. Food number 7 surprised almost everyone when I shared it because it is dark chocolate at 85% cacao or higher. Dark chocolate at that concentration is loaded with flavonols, which are compounds that improve insulin sensitivity and reduce the oxidative stress that feeds visceral fat. A placebo-controlled trial showed that 425 milligrams of flavonols daily for 10 weeks significantly reduced visceral fat and overall body fat percentage in the treatment group. A separate 6-month trial in postmenopausal women found that just 10 grams of 99% cacao chocolate daily reduced body fat mass by 1.3 pounds and body fat percentage by 8% with no other intervention. I want to be clear that we are talking about high concentration dark chocolate, not milk chocolate, not candy bars, at least 85% cacao, and in moderation, because heavy metals can be present in high cacao products. Food number 6 is fatty fish, like salmon, sardines, mackerel, and tuna, because these are the most consistent foods in research for reducing visceral fat. Fatty fish is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, which directly reduce inflammation inside fat tissue and improve insulin sensitivity throughout your body. But here is the mechanism most people miss. These omega-3 fats also reduce fat accumulation in your liver, which acts as a metabolic gatekeeper for visceral fat. So when liver fat improves, visceral fat follows. You do not need to eat fatty fish every day. 2 to 3 meals per week is enough. And even a simple can of sardines works perfectly, as long as the brand has been independently tested for mercury. Before food number 5, I need to warn you about 3 combinations that will quietly grow your visceral fat while you think you are eating healthy. Never combine these healthy fats from walnuts or fish with fruit juice at the same meal, because the concentrated fructose in juice bypasses your liver filters and gets directly converted into visceral fat, even when the rest of your meal is perfect. Never pair dark chocolate with sugary coffee drinks, because the added sugar triggers an insulin spike that cancels every benefit the flavanols were providing, and instead signals your body to store more abdominal fat. Never eat fatty fish alongside white bread or refined carbohydrates, because the rapid glucose spike from refined carbs activates lipogenesis in the liver, which is the exact fat creation process that omega-3 was trying to shut down. Write those 3 down, because they are the quiet mistakes that people make while doing everything else correctly and wonder why the belly fat will not budge. Food number 5 is broccoli sprouts. And gram for gram, they are one of the most metabolically powerful foods you can eat for visceral fat. Broccoli sprouts contain 20 to 100 times more sulforaphane precursors than mature broccoli, which means even a small handful delivers effects you would never get from a full plate of regular broccoli. Sulforaphane activates a master switch called NRF2, which is your internal control center for inflammation and oxidative stress. And when NRF2 turns on, it flips a whole network of genes that protect your mitochondria and calm inflammation. This is devastating for visceral fat, because visceral fat thrives in an inflamed environment. So when inflammation drops, this fat becomes metabolically unstable and much easier to shrink. But sulforaphane does something even more important. It tells your liver to slow down glucose production when blood sugar is already high, a process called gluconeogenesis that is one of the biggest drivers of visceral fat storage. This is also why your morning blood sugar can run high even when you have not eaten anything overnight, which is something many of you over 60 have already noticed on a glucose reading. All you need is half a cup of fresh broccoli sprouts per day, ideally raw, added to your salad or blended into a smoothie. And consistency matters, because sulforaphane has a very short half-life in your body. Food number 4 is blueberries, because they are loaded with anthocyanins, which are polyphenols that send powerful fat-burning signals directly to your visceral fat cells. A cross-sectional analysis showed that higher anthocyanin intake was associated with 9% lower visceral fat tissue, and these compounds simultaneously suppress inflammation and promote beneficial gut bacteria. For those of you over 60, blueberries earn their place for a second reason, because those same anthocyanins that calm visceral fat also support memory function and blood vessel health as you age. A handful of fresh or frozen blueberries daily is all you need. And frozen blueberries are equally effective because the anthocyanin content is preserved during freezing. Food number 3 is chia seeds, because they are packed with soluble fiber that feeds your gut bacteria, which then produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate that improve insulin sensitivity and reduce inflammation. Visceral fat is extremely sensitive to gut-driven inflammation. So when you improve your gut health through chia seeds, the visceral fat starts losing its inflammatory fuel supply. A meta-analysis of 8 randomized controlled trials found that chia seed consumption significantly reduced waist circumference by 1.5 to 2.8 centimeters and also helped reduce blood pressure. If you are over 60, start with just 1 teaspoon and build up slowly over 2 weeks. because your sense of thirst fades with age, and soluble fiber needs plenty of water to work properly without causing bloating. And if you are on blood pressure medication, tell your doctor you have added chia because it gently lowers blood pressure on its own, and the two together can sometimes bring you lower than expected. Food number 2 is extra virgin olive oil, and a double-blind placebo-controlled trial showed that 25 milliliters of olive oil daily as part of a calorie-restricted diet produced 80% greater fat loss than soybean oil in just 9 weeks. The secret is the polyphenols in olive oil, which activate 2 critical pathways: the AMPK pathway, which is your energy sensor that tells your body to burn fat instead of storing it, and the SIRT1 pathway, which improves mitochondrial efficiency. After 60, this muscle connection is everything, because the more muscle you hold onto, the more calories you burn at rest, instead of parking them around your middle as visceral fat. This is why fat loss goes beyond pure calories in and calories out. 2 people eating identical calories can get very different results because the type of food changes how your body processes the energy. Ruth added 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil to her lunch salad and 1 tablespoon to her dinner vegetables every day. And at her 8-week follow-up MRI, the visceral fat coating on her liver had reduced by 31%. Food number 1 is Greek yogurt. And this is the food I saved for last because it does something the other 7 cannot. It directly protects and builds the muscle that your body is losing every single decade after 60. A meta-analysis found that higher yogurt consumption was associated with a 21% reduction in abdominal obesity. And a separate large study in UK twins showed that yogurt consumption was directly associated with reduced visceral fat mass. Greek yogurt specifically is strained, which makes it higher in protein and lower in sugars. And that extra protein improves satiety, supports muscle protein synthesis, and feeds beneficial gut bacteria that reduce the inflammation visceral fat depends on. From your 60s onward, you can lose a significant chunk of muscle every single decade if you do nothing. And that muscle loss is one of the biggest reasons visceral fat creeps up with age. Protein at every meal, paired with even light resistance work at home, resistance bands, light dumbbells, or even standing up from a chair a few extra times a day, protects that muscle and starves visceral fat of its growth signal. Ruth combined Greek yogurt at breakfast with walnuts, blueberries at lunch with her olive oil dressed salad, fatty fish 3 times per week with broccoli sprouts, chia seeds in her morning water, and 1 square of dark chocolate after dinner. At 12 weeks, Ruth had lost 4.2 inches from her waist. Her fasting blood sugar dropped from 118 to 94. Her liver inflammation markers normalized, and her doctor reduced her blood pressure medication for the first time in 9 years. Here is how to start this week. Tonight, add walnuts to tomorrow morning breakfast. This week, buy 1 bag of frozen blueberries and 1 container of Greek yogurt and have them daily. Next week, add broccoli sprouts to 1 meal per day. Start chia seeds slowly with plenty of water, and replace your cooking oil with extra virgin olive oil for every meal. Drop your age in the comments right now and tell me which of these 8 foods you are starting with this week, because I read every single comment and your answer shapes what I cover next. If you are over 60 and you have been told that belly fat is just part of getting older, I want you to hear me clearly. It is not something you are stuck with, because your body still responds to these exact signals at 65 and at 75. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because the next video reveals the 1 exercise that specifically targets visceral fat after 60. And when you combine it with these 8 foods, the results will change everything.